I'm Shannon Eichorn, and this is a reading from my contemporary space opera novel, Rights of Use. It's about flying saucers, body-possessing aliens, and underfunded secret government projects. Enjoy! Alone now. Her kidnapper's gone. Sara held her breath and wiped wet palms on her jeans. Tiny vents wafted air across the sweat on the back of her neck, sending chills down her spine and reminding her how exposed she was. When the monsters came back, she had nowhere to hide. Not that hiding had helped before. They had broken into her house and brought her all the way to the threshold of this place where gravity didn't work, only to leave her locked in this little cabin where the walls bit. She scooted back from the closed trapdoor and shivered. What for? What would they do to her? Either they'd been specially looking for her, in which case they couldn't afford to hurt her after all the trouble they went through. Maybe they'd left to get an interpreter who spoke English. But if so, why her? Her grades certainly didn't make her stand out. She didn't do anything outside of school except for gymnastics and piano, and she wasn't a prodigy at either. Sara wrapped her arms back around her knees and tried to scrunch down as small as she could as the fear crashed back in. Or, more likely, they didn't care who she was. Normal kidnappers, as far as she knew, took kids for one of two reasons. Because they were easy targets for serial killing, or for extorting ransom money. She didn't have to be exceptional to die. Please, not that. She curled tighter and squeezed her eyes closed on the terrifying, hypothetical nothingness. But if they asked for ransom, her parents had some money. She'd wondered lately if they'd be better off without her, but she knew they'd pay to get her back. Maybe it could be that simple. They'd demand money, her parents would pay for her, and she'd go home. That made sense for easy targets, but these men had funny-shaped heads and didn't speak English. They had to come from far away. Africa, maybe? Eastern Europe? How many cities had they passed up on their way around the world? These guys couldn't be normal kidnappers, even without the sideways gravity. Were they worse than serial killers? Terror clutched her heart, squeezing until she thought it would stop the frantic pumping at any moment. Anything to eject her soul free from these monsters' plans. No. She must have seen it wrong. Sara gazed at the trapdoor, picturing how she remembered the room beyond. Maybe it wasn't really that deep, but had mirrors set up to make it look dangerous. That way anyone they took would think twice before jumping out like she had. The mirror's angles had made the men look like they stood on the walls. They'd built a whole room to scare people into staying put. They weren't just taking one or two people. They must be taking hundreds. For what? Bulk discount parts? Her fists balled and she pounded them into the floor. Her hands bounced harmlessly off the padding. How dare they? How dare they take people out of their homes and lives to chop them up for parts? She could have grown up to cure cancer, if she liked medicine, or build Mars rockets or something equally significant. They didn't know, and now neither would she. And now she'd never find out. She popped to her feet and hauled a leg back to kick the wall. At the last second, she remembered shock walls of death and swiveled to kick the control console. Pain exploded in her foot, but the console wobbled appeasingly. "What is wrong with you?" she screeched at it, picturing the controller in his worthless, compassionate eyes. "Why would you do that?" Then she broke into sobs, tears blurring the white floor into the gray walls. She might never go home. She might never snuggle into her dog's fur again, or curl up on the couch with a warm blanket, a bag of carrots, and a good book, or play catch with her dad. All because they wanted to chop her up for parts? The sounds behind her changed from the steady hissing air to the hollow reverberations of a long hallway. Sara held her breath, swiped at the tears obscuring her eyes, and spun to face the now open trapdoor. The controller climbed through. She drew a deep, ragged breath. "What the hell is wrong with you? What gives you the right?" He scrambled up faster, wide-eyed, and jerked the trapdoor behind him. It closed at its own stately pace while he frantically pressed his finger to his lips for silence. "No! You dragged me here! I'm not going to be quiet!" He winced, but he waited for the trapdoor to latch. He waved her down. It's okay, his baritone voice assured her, its gentleness an unreasonable counterpoint to her screams. I didn't come to hurt you. You sure didn't come in peace! She did a double take, checking whether he really was the man who'd sat behind the console earlier. You understand me? I'm General Don Marshall from the Air Force. I'm working undercover right now, and I'm not supposed to be talking to you. In fact, I'm not supposed to know English. He knelt on one knee, so he had to look up at her instead of looming over her. What's your name? She hesitated, looking for any way he could hurt her by having her name. Maybe he needed it to set up the ransom. If so, she needed him to know. Sara? She swallowed. Undercover with the Air Force and not supposed to be talking to her. Maybe he wasn't a bad guy at all. But that didn't absolve him of all the blame. You stood by and let them take me! She threw her best punch. He caught her fist in his palm, absorbing her energy without even rocking. They were gathering women from all over the world. The Air Force is coming to take you home. Just be patient and brave. Oh yeah? She wrenched her fist from his loose grip. What do they want with us? He rested his arms on his raised knee and leaned heavily on it. How happy are you at home? Not, given that the bully's picking on her for her southern accent. But that wasn't the point. It was still better than here. I want to go home. Don't you want to be part of something bigger? Didn't everybody? But she didn't want a part of whatever he had to sell. What do they want with us? What do you want? He wiped a hint of a smile from his face. There are bad aliens who want to implant one of their queens in you. It'll control your body and make you do whatever it wants to. She stared at him. Aliens. He grinned, transforming his face from that of a heartless accomplice to that of someone's uncle. Yes, aliens. From outer space. No, that was crazy. Maybe she was dreaming. Although with the day she'd been having, she couldn't decide whether space aliens were really unbelievable. But they had to be. Everyone said so, from her parents complaining when UFO documentaries came on, to her teachers describing how misunderstandings resulted in flawed eyewitness reports. That had to be it. Aliens were the oversimplified explanation. He twisted around to face away from her and pointed to his neck. See this bulge beside my spine? Now that he emphasized it, tugging on the skin to make it stand out, it looked off. The left side swelled asymmetrically, but his unmarked skin didn't hint at any other mundane explanation. That's an alien. It's a good one, though, and it lets me be me. Maybe it was a tumor, pressing on his brain. Of course, shouldn't that affect something more obvious, like his body movements? He seemed fine. Mr. Marshall let go and the bulge blended back into his sagging skin. The alien who ordered you kidnapped and his queen aren't like my alien, though. They'll control your body. You will be trapped within yourself. She shuddered. Can't you stop it? Assuming it was true. Maybe. If everything works out. And if not? He met her eyes earnestly. Sara, there are good aliens, too. Aliens like the one I host that won't control you. I could swap out the bad one for a good one so that even if the Air Force fails, you'll be okay. And that's it? That's it. I just need to know that's what you want. A giant lump in her skin? A foreign object, some oozing living thing jammed underneath? Behind her where she couldn't see it? Ew! How could anyone want that? Her empty stomach flip-flopped, threatening to wring itself out over the floor. She backed away until the console pressed against her hips. You want to stick one of those in me? His pleasant, helpful expression fell blank. Better a symbiont that won't take over you than one that will. But she had only his word on that, and if what he said was true, maybe she wasn't talking to Mr. Marshall from the Air Force, but the little lump he'd pointed out. She shuffled to the console's far edge, keeping her back pushed against it, protected. I don't want either. If the Air Force comes, I don't have to choose. In case they fail, I don't want it! Her voice snapped into a shrill screech that even the soft floor couldn't absorb. You can't make me! His face set in the skeptical expression her dad used when he knew he could make her and didn't want to argue. Sara. No, I don't have to. I'm not going to do it. He pushed to his feet and glared down at her from beneath bushy eyebrows. Listen to me. My team is dedicated but not very experienced at this. If they fail, if they can't get you home, the bad aliens, the Chemtwed, might choose you for their queen. She will use you like a puppet. She will impregnate you and grow her offspring in your belly. She'll do whatever she wants with your body, and in a few years, when she tires of you, she'll leave, shredding your brain on the way out. If you're lucky, they'll dispose of your body before you finish bleeding. He pointed to the lump in his neck. Are you sure you don't want a Jertwed instead? Sara hugged her arms to her chest and tried not to picture herself lying on the floor, vision going dim as the foreign mass crawled away in tracks of her blood. She wiped her eyes cleared and glared at him. Go away. Leave me alone. He raised his hands to placate her, then dropped them as if she weren't worth his time. Okay, I'm going. He stomped toward her. She scurried to the room's other side, but he ducked around the console, focusing on it. She studied him. Would he really listen to her? He had to, right? If he was one of the bad ones, the Chemtwed, if that neck lump controlled him, then he didn't have to ask her permission. If not, if his neck lump was what he called a Jertwed, it didn't control him. She'd talked to the Air Force officer she saw. Well, he'd asked. Didn't that mean no was an answer? This was all so crazy. How could it even be real? The trapdoor opened, and Mr. Marshall crossed to it, his expression grim. Sure enough, he got out and stood sideways to close it. It sealed with a thunk, closing off the echoing corridor sounds. She tried to swallow the lump in her throat. She'd definitely seen that right this time. At least some of what he said had to be true. Aliens, spaceships, body possession. Even if it was all true, it didn't mean she had to do what he said. But what if he was right and getting a Jertwed implanted was her only real option? She just missed it.
That was an excerpt from Rights of Use. The full novel is available in paperback on Amazon or in person at the bookshop in Lakewood or the shop in Berea. The ebook is available on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. The audiobook is narrated by Leslie Howard, a professional, and available on Audible, Google Play, Apple Books, and many, many others. Find me online on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, or on my website at blog.shannoneichorn.com. Thank you!